Sakamoto Ryoma's story begins in the 1800s on the Japanese island of Shikoku, tucked away in the province of Tosa in the Kochi prefecture. Shikoku is the smallest of the Japanese islands located in the south of Japan. As Sakamoto Ryoma was entering the world, the dawn of a modernized Japan was nearing the horizon. Having been established for more than 250 years, the Tokugawa shogun reign was nearing its end, a period of peace and of anti-Western ideologies. Since the implementation of the isolation policy in 1641 by the Tokugawa shogunate, Iemitsu, Japan's attitude toward foreign nations was hostile. Japan saw the effects of foreign nations bringing Christianity to its neighboring Asian countries like China. Japan was determined not to be infiltrated and influenced by these outsiders. With the exception of Dutch trading on the island of Hiradu, Japan was content in self-isolation. The Dutch provided Japan with the necessary information they needed from the outside world. However, in the 1800s, the Tokugawa isolation policy was being tested by foreign ships. Just a year after Sakamoto Ryoma was born, the merchant ship Morrison made an attempt to enter Japanese waters. This attempt prompted officials in 1839 to renew their anti-Western policies. While these foreign ships proved to be unsuccessful in their endeavors to enter Japanese waters, these attempts foreshadowed the coming of Matthew Commodore Perry in 1853. The tides were changing in Japan, and Sakamoto Ryoma was there to witness the end of the 250-year reign of Japanese shoguns, later becoming an instrumental force in the rise of a modernized Japan.
Sakamoto Ryoma was born on the southern Japanese island of Shikoku in a town called Tosa on January 3, 1836. Ryoma's ancestors had accumulated a trade fortune from brewing sake, and with that wealth, they purchased the low rank of samurai, goshi, for their family. At the age of 14, Ryoma began his education in swordsmanship, training under a local samurai, Hinano Benji. 4 years later, Ryoma left Tosa to continue his study of swordsmanship in the art of Hokushin Itsuryu under Sadakichi Chiba, a master swordsman in the faraway city of Edo. There, Ryoma quickly became a master instructor and began teaching sword techniques in Edo, now called Tokyo. While Sakamoto Ryoma was in Edo, Japan witnessed the might of the Western world. Japan had been self-isolated from the rest of the world and did not engage in trade, visit, or receive visitors from most Western nations. This all changed starting on July 8, 1853. When American Commodore Matthew Perry entered Tokyo Bay with 4 warships. The Americans were determined to open Japan for trade either diplomatically or by force. This dilemma to open Japan to the rest of the world or fight to remain in isolation caused many political conflicts during Sakamoto Ryoma's life. These conflicts would ultimately lead to the unprecedented Meiji Restoration, where Japan was able to successfully adapt to Western ideals and technology faster than any country in history. After spending 5 years studying swordsmanship, Sakamoto Ryoma returned to Tosa, and in 1861, Ryoma joined the Tosa Loyalist Party, the Tosa Kinoto. The Tosa Loyalist Party's mantra was "Revere the Emperor, expel the barbarians." The Loyalist Party wanted to rid Japan of the shogunate and replace them with strong imperial rule by the emperor. Takeshi Zuzan, the founder of the Tosa Loyalist Party, used his party to organize assassinations of shogunate supporters. Ryoma fled from his clan 1 year later and moved back to Edo.
Around 1862, Sakamoto Ryoma found himself at the doorstep of Katsu Kaishu with blood in his eyes. Kaishu was one of the last samurai of the Tokugawa period. He was a revered pioneer of Japan's new modernized navy, as he embodied the sentiment, Japanese spirit, Western technology. Ryoma, an avid anti-shogun activist, came to Kaishu's house as a rogue samurai, or ronin, most likely to kill Kaishu. This would have been a major blow to the reigning Tokugawa regime were he to be eliminated. However, fate had other plans for these two. Kaishu convinced Ryoma to rethink the revere the emperor, expel the barbarians logic. He argued that Japan desperately needed to modernize in order to preserve itself, its culture, and its way of life. Sakamoto was convinced and became Kaishu's protege. From here, Ryoma learned the ways of the West in both politics and military under the tutelage of Kaishu. The technology of the West was crucial in making any strides against the shogun's regime. In 1866, working as a third-party neutral only negotiated in the interests of the unified nation of Japan, Ryoma thrust himself into the whirlwind of the rivalry between the Choshu and Satsuma domains. The Choshu and Satsuma had been at each other's throats for years. They had been in a constant power struggle, going back and forth in being the dominant domain in the imperial court. In order to usher in a new, modern era in Japan and replace the feudal shogun system, these two powerful domains would have had to work together. Ryoma was integral in negotiating a treaty alliance between the two hostile domains, known as the Sachu Alliance. This was a vital step in the fight for a modern Japan, and ultimately led to the fall of the shogun and rise of the Meiji Emperor during the Boshin War. However, he didn't live to see the day the Tokugawa shogunate fell and the supremacy of the emperor was restored. Instead, while in Kyoto with his friend Nakawaka Shintaro at the Omiya Inn, Sakamoto met an untimely end. Only in his 30s, when he passed away, a group of assassins knocked on the door and his sumo wrestler bodyguard answered. The assassins were disguised as normal callers. However, when his bodyguard turned to get Ryoma, he was slashed in the back and fatally wounded, later dying. Then the group of assassins rushed upstairs where Sakamoto Ryoma and his friend were sitting and talking, and they slayed them both.
Sakamoto Ryoma left an extensive legacy in Japan. According to the Japanese Times, many citizens still have great fondness for Sakamoto, and in January of 2010, 14.2% of the 1,000 people they polled said he was innovative and displayed strong leadership qualities that greatly changed the outcome of the country, and is actually one of their top 100 most important figures in Japanese history. The fondness that stands today stems from the immense number of correspondence letters he left behind after he died that showed not only his opinions on politics, but also included some illustrative doodles. Being able to read his letters made people relate to him on a personal level, for his doodles, like any normal person would have done when they were bored and writing a letter they weren't interested in, but they also praised him for his understanding and opinions in politics and him wanting change. Some of his letters were even made into Japanese movies or television shows that are still popular today. The media frenzy surrounding his life includes 7 TV shows, 5 fully featured films that had lengthy premieres in theaters. There are also novels and manga comic books that are semi-fictional stories published about his life. The most popular media form about his life, however, is the Sunday evening drama Ryoma, which aired in 2010 but is still highly acclaimed today. Following his assassination, Sakamoto was enshrined at the Yasuki Shrine in Tokyo, which is still frequently visited by patrons. Visitors often pay respect by leaving offerings by his burial site and memorializing him for his selfless involvement in the Satsuma and Choshu government alliance. However, his actual gravesite is in Kyoto, which holds many other statues and artworks dedicated to the likeness of Sakamoto. Only a few hours away in his hometown of Kochi is the Sakamoto Ryoma Memorial Museum, which holds a majority of his corresponding letters, his armor, as well as paintings and sculptures done for him. Although he was a well-known samurai, he also was a big influence in politics. He was mentioned in 2010 by Justice Minister Kiyono Hatoyama for the Liberal Democratic Party, that stated he wishes to play the role of Sakamoto as a mediator and be as understanding and as looked up as he was. In a twist of fate, this justice minister is actually distantly related to Sakamoto, and is trying to continue his legacy of impact on Japan.